Hey, Seekers, and welcome back. I'm your host, Julienne Irons, and today we continue our exploration of self-worth and confidence through the energetic lens. Now, in our last episode, we explored the science of confidence and learned that confidence isn't something we're born with. It's something we build through evidence, experience, and self-trust. But what if some of what we've been calling confidence isn't confidence at all? What if the drive to always be productive, always be prepared, always have the answer, or always be on, is actually coming from anxiety, adrenaline, or a nervous system that's working overtime to keep us safe? Our guest today is SuperKate, a coach and nervous system educator who helps people understand the connection between regulation, self-trust, and the way confidence shows up in everyday life. In this conversation, we explore the difference between performative confidence and regulated confidence, how high-functioning anxiety can disguise itself as competence, why so many of us struggle to rest, and what begins to change when we stop trying to prove our worth and start listening to what our bodies have been telling us all along. This is Perspective Shifts for Healing with the Hanged Woman, where perspective is power. Let's get into it. So let me guess. You're running a business, showing up, doing all the things, and still second-guessing your next move. That's usually not a sign you need more effort. It's a sign you need clarity. At 3 of Cups Healing, we offer energy and intuitive-based marketing strategy for your small business. We combine tarot insight, competitive research, and real-world strategy to help you understand what makes you stand out, how to communicate it clearly, and what your next move should actually be. So, Seeker, if you're ready to stop second-guessing and start moving with intention, book a free consultation at 3ofcupshealing.com. Your vision, your magic. Let's make it real. Together. That's 3ofcupshealing.com. All right, let's get into the episode. SuperKate, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I am very grateful for the chance to speak with you and with your audience. I don't take this lightly. I'm very honored. Thank you.
So, SuperKate, for listeners meeting you for the first time, can you share a bit about your work and what led you to focus on nervous system regulation and confidence?
So it's going to start in a very interesting place. It actually started with snow.
Ooh.
Near where my nervous system started getting activated and dysregulated in the first place. So I grew up very close to here in a very small town where uniqueness was not celebrated, and where, the culture of our society of produce and get the good grades and follow the rules was follow these certain or a certain religion. It was all very straight and narrow. Early on, I realized that was not my path. And I ended up moving towards things that did light me up a lot. They really did light me up. But I had to hide a lot of it while I was in this town. Like, I couldn't show up as who I wanted to be until I decided to finally do it. And then, when that mask came off, there was a definite shift in how I was treated. And so I ran towards the things that I believed in and I loved. I spent a lot of time in the entertainment industry, which just, art is incredible. As you know, celebrate the arts.
Yeah.
We need more of it. And I was also running away from a lot. I was basing everything I was doing off of my accomplishments, off of getting into the big city and who I knew and all of that stuff that is all performance and society based. I left that world and I moved into Pilates and personal training and everything. I've always been a mover and a dancer and a sports person, but being there with people in a fashion as a coach, I got to see what was coming out that I had never clearly defined myself. That when we start relaxing, when we start breathing, it opens up a lot that we may not want to see, but that's part of that nervous system regulation. So fast forward a couple more years, I've moved back to a town that's very close to where I lived growing up. And it has brought up a lot of stuff for me. It's brought up a lot of anxiety, a lot of unworthiness, all of these things, that inner child, that 16-year-old version of me was just like, are you kidding me? You want to face this now? You're back here now? But then coming back to where it started, I was sitting at the living room window one day when the snow was falling. Now, I'm a huge lover of snow. I have it tattooed on me. I don't necessarily want to exist in it 24/7, but it is a safe, calming place for me. And I was sitting there watching, and I felt the urge to get back to work, to do more. And I thought, why can't I just be here? Why is my worth tied to what I'm supposed to be doing? Can't I just exist watching the snow? And so it was all of those little moments, watching the snow, watching deer. We have a baby groundhog living on our property right now. It was just a fuzzball. And the baby rabbits that we see all the time. I mean, taking that time, taking those pauses, and just being present with what's happening around me, that really started changing things. That presence is when I began to notice that I had been running away from, trying to prove so much. And I saw my calming and my nervous system regulation being reflected in my clients, being reflected in my relationships, and I couldn't go back. And I realized how much of that push forward had just been a show. It had been my ego running forward and not the groundedness that is kind of hard to define, but when you feel it, you feel it.
When you talk about not being able to like look at the snow without feeling like you have to go back to work, that is exactly what I'm trying to work on. I went to Joshua Tree for one of my friend's birthdays, and it was so hard for me to just be present and not feel like I had to get back to work. It was literally me tying my worth of being in this world to the work that I had to accomplish rather than being present with the people who I were with, who I love so dearly.
Yeah.
And so that makes me even more excited about this conversation because, like, Lord Jesus, help me, SuperKate, please.
It's a process. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. And we have so much built up against us. You can call it overcoming, but just to face and accept that this world puts on us and is going to continue to put on us until we evolve. And hint, the only way we can evolve, like truly evolve, is to move through that and past it, because that's where that creative thinking comes from. That's where the giving really comes from.
And I realized this weekend that in order for me to move past any fear that I have right now, I have to have self-worth and I have to have self-confidence to move through it. Otherwise, I will stay frozen and want to hide under a blanket. And so I have to have the faith in myself to say, okay, I am feeling this fear and I'm feeling this anxiety, but I'm still worthy.
One of the quick things that I learned, or quick reframe, because I think a lot of like that false positivity stuff out there is going to say, well, I am worthy. Just keep saying, I am worthy. And eventually you'll believe it. What changed for me was when the question was, what if I could be worthy? Is there a possibility, a small possibility, that I am worthy? And then where am I feeling that in my body? And then taking the incremental next step. Because if you could keep telling yourself I'm worthy and you don't believe it, then you're reinforcing the negative belief constantly. And not just thinking, but again, the feeling. And that's where you come back to the nervous system.
SuperKate, when most people think about confidence, what do you see them actually describing?
Always on top of things. They go after what they want. They're not afraid of anybody else's opinions. They're just strong, and not necessarily physically strong, but they just seem strong. And that whole like not worrying about others people's opinions, it almost has a bit of detachment to it. We think that we have to be big and loud, but really feeling confident when it comes down to the nervous system is not being in threat mode, and being okay with being. I think you'll see a lot of evidence out in the world where confidence doesn't always mean competence. So we look at people who are loud and always have an answer, but it doesn't mean it's the best answer. It doesn't mean it's an answer that we agree with, but because they are so sure of it, we think, oh, they're confident. Most of the time, it's because they're just putting on the mask and putting on the game because they are trying to hide the fact that they are scared also. The ego is driving it. And when your ego is driving the show, your confidence is incredibly unreliable. When you're basing things on outcomes, which is oftentimes what ego is based on, I experienced that myself. When those outcomes went away, when those outcomes like did not go in my favor, I didn't feel confident at all. So then I chased the next outcome. Do you know anybody who kind of feels like that?
I mean, hi, you're looking at it, baby. You're looking at a kid. You're staring right in the face. So, what are some common ways that we mistake performance, adrenaline, or anxiety for confidence?
So performance is rewarded by society. The person who is speaking loudly, as I said, the person who is really decisive in a meeting, who never shows doubt, has the answers. Again, we're coming back to that outcome related moment. But they're running at like a near constant sort of threat response, but are really good at hiding it. Then you've got your adrenaline. Adrenaline is a stress hormone. So I work well under pressure. I've said that a few times myself. It can be adrenaline dependency because you only access that capability when things like the stakes are high enough. Outside of that, everything kind of feels meh. You're unmotivated. And perhaps you feel like you've lost yourself a bit. With anxiety, over preparing is one way of looking at that, where saying yes when you mean no, because no is too risky. The hypervigilance that is really running the show because you are trying to protect your safety. And we've got a lot of those high achievers out there who spend like an enormous amount of mental energy essentially like rehearsing all of the worst case scenarios in an effort to feel in control. And
I'm laughing because again, it is I.
but again, like this is coming from a system that has been protecting you, protecting ancestors, protecting a way of life that, we are just working with. It's not wrong. It's just you've been working with it and managing it so that you stay alive. There's like a common mistake of the I did it anyway feeling, and people will push through whatever is scaring them. And it's oftentimes considered confidence building, but they more often than not have habituated themselves to just ignoring their body entirely. When you override those cues, you stop being able to tell the difference between productive discomfort and actual warning. There is a place. It does suck. Change can come from discomfort if we actually sit with it, but we can just like run past it.
It disrupts my ability to trust my intuition as well. If I'm constantly anxious about what's going to happen, like constantly trying to control the situation, it does make it very difficult for me to trust the truth of what my body actually says, what my intuition is actually saying.
I didn't understand how much my discomfort was running the show for a while, but it kind of all came to a head one day when I just decided all of this stuff hasn't been working and I'm going to stop doing that. I mean, technically it was also a Christmas vacation, so I wasn't having to be doing anything, right? But even knowing it was a holiday and nobody was going to be looking to me for any answers, just sitting on the couch was like, oh my God. But this can be okay too. But I don't know what the answers are. And I don't know that stepping away from that was the best idea. What if it wasn't? Well, okay.
So you often talk about the idea that what people experience as confidence often comes from dysregulation, right? Can you break that down for us a bit more?
Yeah. So your nervous system, its job is to keep you safe and alive. It's scanning your environment, your body, other people's faces, hearing their voices, and am I safe right now? Am I not? What do I have around me? The heart rate gets up, the breath gets shallow, your muscles tighten, and your thinking narrows. And that thinking that narrows feels like, oh, it's good because now I'm sharp and I'm decisive and I am ready. And it has this illusion of clarity. And to some degree it is clarity, but it only works really in the short term because just like the antelope running away from a lion, the only goal of that antelope is to get away. It's not what's the best direction to get away. What could I use in my vicinity to distract the lion? Is that a cliff or is it just a rock? What are all of these things? No, it's just go. There's various ways that can translate into our day-to-day lives, but sometimes an email it's still fascinating, but sometimes an email feels like that. I gave a talk a few years ago about sort of the breakdown of our evolution. It was only about 350 years ago. And in the scope of human evolution, which is around 300,000 years, I believe, 350 years ago is when the steam engine arrived. And people were scared that going 30 miles an hour was going to make us explode because our bodies couldn't handle going that fast. There's these steps where, okay, we got over that pretty quickly, right? But if it took only up until 350 years ago for us to discover that, of course, it makes sense that an email freaks us out right now. Of course, it makes sense that the stuff that we see on social media feeds into all of it. We interpret things, we interpret stories from everything. We come to every word, every conversation with what we have learned to believe about it, what we have believed the other person believes about it, and then conversational skills. So I can say something in an email and you can hear it completely differently. And then this kind of comes back to a lot of what I love about how intonation changes things. So somebody can write you an email and their intention was, this is great. But in the moment, they didn't put an exclamation point. They just, maybe they didn't even have like a punctuation at all. You were trying to please them. Your experience with them isn't fully formed. So you see it as, this is great. There are like 3 or 4 different stories there that I could build in my head of, if I receive that email, this is great. That's it. That's all they think. There's no feedback. Am I supposed to move forward? Am I supposed to not? And the stories start coming at us and we interpret it based on, again, where we're at that day, what we've told ourselves. It's not perfect. It's not the best thing they've ever seen, or they think it's great, but I don't think it's great. So they shouldn't have said that. I think you can hear the magnitude of places that we can go with a simple email. So understanding that an email can literally be just words that we are writing, or they can encapsulate the emotions that the sender is trying to send and then the emotions the receiver already is setting in place when they are looking at that email. From a dysregulated nervous system, we will make up a bunch of different stories about that email. We will hear it differently. We will respond to it differently because our system isn't safe. Our being isn't safe. We don't trust what we're doing. We don't trust what they're doing. When the system is regulated, you can read the email for what it is, which is words. It can be interpreted different ways. If I need more of an interpretation, I can respond back, but there's no necessary extra step that has to be taken because I've got information in return, unless it didn't fulfill the information I needed to do the next step or to just make the next request.
So this is an example of what false confidence looks like.
The false confidence shows up in a lot of different ways. With that email, it can show up as second guessing then what they're saying, trying to prepare for how we can respond if it wasn't what we thought it was. So going into that over-preparedness place. There's false confidence in saying yes when you mean no. A lot of people fall into this where they overcommit because that's how we prove our worth. So we're constantly saying yes again instead of no because I don't have the capacity. So if that email had said, can you do this? That false confidence would be like, of course I can. Of course I can. Why wouldn't I? I'm SuperKate. Why wouldn't I take this on? But my body is really telling me something different. It's like, no, 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 no. But I've been overriding it for so long, I just ignore that, or I don't feel it at all at sometimes in my life personally. And like some of my clients have just ignored it. The false confidence comes up as like, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm just busy. I'm fine. That ties into that like high achiever who doesn't notice they're actually doing it. And they think they're fine because, again, they can't check in to notice that they're not fine. The question that is ignored is what happens if I stop long enough to realize that I'm not fine? I don't need to know what that is. I'm going to keep going because fine is fine. Fine is fine. I'm fine. You're fine. We're fine.
I think that shows up for me a lot, like when I take on a lot of things, is the fear of everything stopping if I say no, right? It's like I don't have the confidence to say no because I'm afraid that saying no is going to bring everything to a screeching halt, and I won't get any more opportunities. I won't be able to pay my rent. I won't be able to survive if I say no.
Yeah. And again, the society that we've built, it commands more and more from us, especially with money as a category of our worth. And there's less money, then we have to do more to make more money. So then we stay safe, literally also. I get both my privilege as a white person, but also my privilege just as a person who has enough of an income right now. And when I've not had it, that safety, oh, I've got to just keep going. I've got to keep going because it won't work out if I don't keep going. We exist in that for so long. Again, we don't notice, we don't believe if there is an opportunity we can say no to, that it can be okay. And so how do we start taking small places where we can say no just to build a little proof for ourselves? Like perhaps it's not saying no to the job yet, but perhaps it's saying no to going out to dinner when you're just tired and the friend still is your friend. So yeah, building those little moments up for ourselves.
And let's talk about high functioning anxiety. How does that show up as confidence?
Oh, it drives you. I mean, it really looks like you're competent because you just keep going. You are constantly taking action because you can't rest until everything's handled. You're always prepared and possibly over preparing for everything, like we kind of talked about earlier, never letting anything drop, which again looks like somebody who is on top of it all, when internally it's coming from a place of, dear God, I can't let anything drop because that means I'm in trouble. I'm not safe. It can read as knowing exactly how the room feels when you walk into a room of people, like understanding who's got what energy. And now I know what the energy is, and so I have to manage it. Understanding how to perform under pressure.
Yeah. Necessities of we need that. We need to know how to do that.
Yeah. And there is an element of you can still perform under pressure and totally dissociate. So you're still doing the thing, but you have no idea how your body feels about anything. You're just getting through. And I, again, understand that we have to do that sometimes. But when it becomes the way of life, how do we make the physical and mental change? We're not disassociating, that we are actually just doing it because there is some pressure right now. And we need to get to the next step and not dissociate.
Now, why can we sometimes appear confident on the outside but feel super anxious or unsettled underneath? I get that from people all the time where I'm like, I'm so anxious right now. And they're like, oh, I could never tell. I would never be able to tell. You look perfectly calm.
Right, because you look calm. We see stuff on TV in movie theaters all the time where people are acting, and we believe, a lot of us, that we aren't good actors, but we are, because we put on the mask, we make the eye contact, we appear to be really into whatever they're saying. Okay, if I lean in, if I make eye contact, that means they will know I really care about what they're saying. And I don't actually know what they're saying because I have a running list of what they mean by everything they're saying, what I'm going to have to do in order to manage what they're saying if it doesn't go the way that makes me feel better. And then I've got all of those other things that I have to do tomorrow. And I forgot about that thing. But as long as I keep making eye contact and keep leaning in, most of the time, they're going to feel seen and heard, because those systems, the nervous system that is keeping us in that chaos, that and our facial, that they're different systems. So we can, again, this comes back to the disassociating. We can give people the visual of what they want, what they need, while actually not being in the moment at all. That does then result in not dealing with what's happening in the moment. Confidence and anxiety aren't opposites. We can be anxious while having a mostly regulated nervous system. It's that balance of, when it's totally unregulated, the anxiety is running the show. When I'm confident, I can be a little anxious about something in the moment, but know that I am going to be present and move through it and show up the best as I can and the closest to my truth and what I need and what is best for the situation, versus anxiety where who knows what's going to happen, because we could go a million different ways, but we've zoned in on one way and we then think that's the only way it's going to get handled.
Okay, Seekers, I think this is a really great place to take a break. We'll be right back with the episode. Grief doesn't move in a straight line, and it doesn't come with a clear path forward either. Seekers, if you've experienced loss, whether it's a loved one, a pet, miscarriage, or another life transition, Healing After Loss was created to support you through it in a real and grounded way. Led by trauma-informed intuitive energy healer Julienne Irons, this self-paced course gives you space to process your emotions, understand what you're moving through, and find your own path forward with tools, reflection, and optional life support along the way. And because you're listening to The Hanged Woman, you can receive 10% off with code TheHangedWoman. Remember joy again and learn more at threeofcupshealing.com/HAL course. That's threeofcupshealing.com/HAL course. And the code for 10% off is The Hanged Woman. Hey, Seeker. So if your marketing feels unclear or inconsistent, it's usually not because you're doing it wrong. It's because it's not fully aligned yet. At Three of Cups Healing, we use energy and intuitive-based marketing strategy to help you get clear on your messaging, your audience, and how to show up in a way that actually works for you. That means less second-guessing, more direction, and a business that feels like it fits. So, Seeker, if you're ready to stop second-guessing and start moving with intention, book a free consultation at threeofcupshealing.com. Your vision, your magic. Let's make it real. Together. That's threeofcupshealing.com. All right, let's keep the perspective shift going. You talked a little bit about how when the nervous system is dysregulated, we often tend to over-explain or over-apologize. What's actually happening with us when we do that?
A lot of that is fawn behavior.
Mm.
So we hear about the fight or flight, but there's this other part that is fawning because the fighting or the fleeing isn't safe or necessarily available. And so that fawning response, how it shows up with the over explaining and the over apologizing, if I can make you feel comfortable enough, if I can explain myself enough, perhaps if I take up less space, then I'll be safe. So it's not a personality trait. It's not politeness by over explaining or over apologizing. It's appeasement. And the nervous system has been really worried about disapproval and conflict. And that, again, starts early in life. Being seen as difficult, taking up too much space, being rejected from a group. Our nervous system starts reacting early because we want to stay alive and we start managing the threat. Over explaining, the prefrontal cortex is actually responsible for our communication, measured communication, and that gets overridden by the amygdala. And so if our amygdala is in heightened response, we will keep talking to make sure every corner, everything is covered. And then the over apologizing, we're making sure that you all understand that I'm going to name all of my inadequacies before you can, because then I'm in control. I have a friend who, when you ask him a question, he will respond with, I thought you were going to say this, and this was how I was going to respond to this, but you said this. It's like, but I didn't say any of that. But you don't need to tell me that because that's actually completely irrelevant to the conversation. But because he was worried about what he thought I would say, he was preparing for that disappointment, right? That again gets back into not being enough and justifying and being ourselves is too risky. When we stop doing that, and when our nervous system is regulated, we have more clarity. We tolerate silence. And it can be scary at first, like saying the thing you want to say and stop instead of, I did this earlier. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions? I mean, that can be, yes, that can be interpreted different ways, but it can also be a sign of, I just want to make sure I've covered all my bases, because your not knowing is a reflection of me not being able to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that with does that make sense? Because one of my core wounds is that I'm stupid. And so if I'm talking to somebody about something, I often followed up with, does that make sense? Because I want to make sure that I was like clear. Because I didn't have the confidence to know that like what I said did make sense. Or they could have understood it. And if they didn't understand it, then they can ask me follow-up questions without me having to like follow up myself.
Have you experienced that in the moment where you think, I actually don't need to ask them the question
Oh,
right
all the
now?
time. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
very, now that I'm aware of it, I'm super aware of it. Because I will stop myself from saying, does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense? When I'm interviewing guests for the show, I used to do that a lot. Does that make sense? And I would cut it out all the time because I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. Like I'll listen back and I'd be like, it made perfect sense. Like relax. So it actually took me listening back to my own words to realize that what I was saying did make sense, and that gave me the confidence to sort of like drop the question at the end. Does that make sense?
Awesome. You actually had the audio feedback, which a lot of us don't. And we have to be in that moment or we forget about it entirely. And then the habitual reaction happens again of, does that make sense? Over apologizing, I did it this way. I hope this works okay. I'm really sorry if it doesn't. And I'm really sorry that I may have sounded, it can be that, or it can simply be, I'm sorry, which we especially I feel as people who are raised as a female, we can't take up space. We have to apologize for somebody else's discomfort. And how often we find ourselves saying, I'm sorry you're going through that. There's understanding, I'm sorry you're going through that versus that is a really difficult situation and it's not a reflection that needs my apology. I'm sorry can be used, but it can also be said differently instead of us taking it on. And then there's like the standard, how many times do you apologize when you are kind of in somebody's way at the grocery store?
Oh my God, I say sorry. I say sorry all the time. I'm always like, oh, they bump into me, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, what is
Yeah,
wrong with
what
me?
happened? I mean, what's wrong is that you were trained into that, right? That's what was modeled,
Yeah.
that's what has been reiterated, you've been reiterating. And what happens the next time you're at the store and somebody does bump or you bump? Perhaps maybe not if you bump. I'm sorry is relevant then, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
But if they bump into you or it was clearly you are just literally going down the aisle and they happen to be looking at something that you are going to then walk in front of,
Hmm.
even if it's for like a half a second, dropping the urge to say I'm sorry and just walking. You could smile, like whatever you want to do, but why do I have to apologize for walking down the aisle and walking in front of somebody if they are standing with the space for my cart and me to go through?
Right. Yeah, that's so true. Why did it, oh, sorry. Yeah, why do we have to do that? It's so weird. We're so weird.
Being human is a fun little experiment, isn't it?
It certainly is. Oh my goodness. So let's talk about that first, right? So like we do that, right? We apologize in situations that we don't really need to apologize for. Your friend being like, "Oh, I thought you were going to say this, but you said this," right? How much of us doing that is actually connected to trying to manage other people's reactions?
Most of it is because by not saying I'm sorry, if somebody else has been trained to say I'm sorry and we don't say I'm sorry, there's a potential that they are going to judge us for not saying I'm sorry. There
Hmm.
is a potential that they're going to think we are, disrespectful
Hmm.
for not saying that. That then threatens our safety. It threatens our community, our sense of community, which evolutionarily has kept us safe. And while we don't necessarily rely on it in the same ways that we used to, we fall into this because we need the safety. Our nervous system keeps the walls up and keeps us just following what is standard, what is protocol. With my friend, I believe there was something that happened where he didn't feel believed as a kid. He has to prove it was because he actually thought something else was happening. So he doesn't have to be judged now. If we manage other people's reactions, we get to be prepared. We get to be the people that they want us to be. And that is not always the person that we want to be. But identifying who that is can sometimes be scarier because it could be going against who they want us to be. And there are a host of reasons why being a part of the crowd and doing what this person believes is best for us is seemingly better for us. And so we stop paying attention to our nervous system and how much it's screaming that this doesn't feel safe because this isn't the choice we would make. Or, this isn't the person we actually want to be around. Um, but if we can just set things up the correct way, then it will be a little bit easier. And I think history proves that that's more often than not, it's just not true. Because how many variables are there in any given situation? Managing it one way versus managing it like 0.00009% differently can produce a totally different outcome. But we think this is the only outcome because we've managed it. It's false.
Now, when we're out and we're like living our lives, how can we tell the difference between adrenaline-driven confidence and more grounded, regulated sense of confidence?
They feel different in the body. For adrenaline, it feels like there's a kind of a charge in your body.
Mm-hmm.
You're ready. You are mobilized. You are kind of activated, and kind of associate it with that sensation you have when you have a lot of caffeine and you're kind of buzzing.
It reminds me of like when we're going to war, like it's that adrenaline driven confidence, like, let's go. Like all the men in 300 were just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I guess it could come in handy if you are fighting for your life.
They're absolutely necessary places where adrenaline driven confidence is necessary. It's necessary for certain situations, for certain people. An average human in their average life, I'm not calling anybody average. You're amazing. You're magical.
I know what you
I think
mean.
you're incredible. And we don't need that,
Yeah.
but we often exist in that. And then the grounded confidence, you feel settled. It feels solid. It's not solid in a literally like solid form. It has flexibility. It's kind of like mesh in a way.
Mhm.
Like it has the ability to expand in one direction, to move faster, to make quicker decisions. And it has the ability to rest and go the opposite way. But it evens out. I think a lot of people find it boring because it doesn't have the big highs and the big lows, but it's more sustainable. You don't get addicted to the constant, I need more. Your thinking is different. When you're adrenaline based, you've got that sort of narrow minded, even though it doesn't feel like it necessarily. It's decisive. It can be brilliant, but it's a lot more binary, right or wrong, safe or unsafe. And with the grounded, your thinking expands. You can make decisions more often than not. They might be delayed because you're not hurried to make them. And you are able to have more complexity and research behind the decision if necessary. But even if not, even if it has to be a quick decision, your relationship to what the outcome of that decision is different. So like with the adrenaline, if the decision doesn't work out, if it's a failure, that comes back to like, I'm a failure, I'm unworthy. When it's grounded, it is, okay, that was something that I have figured out now. It wasn't that answer. What answer do I need to do next to make it the next best choice? So we don't associate with how many more things can I do? How quickly can I do them to get to the next thing that will make me feel better? We get to sit with, it didn't work. And now I can understand what is a better choice. And that's okay that it didn't work. It's not failure.
It just seems like our bodies just feel just more connected to the moment, more
Yeah.
present,
Yeah.
more connected to the person that we're
Yeah,
with.
absolutely. Because you are not chasing that adrenaline high, you don't have the deep burnout that often comes after it. So you have the energy to be with your kids. You have the energy to connect with your partner or to connect with your friends instead of always being in that activated state and then coming back to like, well, I've got your Joshua Tree example. I've got so much stuff to do. Why can't I be here with these people in this awesome place? I've got to chase the next thing because that is going to provide the next comfort that I need, that what my system has been telling me is going to make me safe.
You could have said it would provide the next hit I would need, and I would have understood that too.
I'm, I'm,
Because it's kind of like a drug. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, that
yeah. And
addiction
I mean,
to having to do the next thing.
yeah. And there's absolutely areas where it has progressed society and certainly technology forward in ways that maybe it wouldn't have happened as quickly. There are benefits to chasing after things. It's understanding how you are approaching that chasing after. Is it because you can't handle not chasing it and who you are without chasing it?
How does performance-based identity play into all of this stuff?
The performance driven is outcome driven. And so, whatever we need to do to create the outcome that is going to serve us and our safety the best, we do whatever we need to do to create that. If that's wearing the clothes that everybody's wearing, it's getting the good grades, it's following the rules. That's where your performance based identity is going to both give you the feedback that you know is going to feel safe, but is playing into what everybody else wants, which is, again, ultimately what society and our culture tell us most. Don't step out of line. Do this. Everybody does this. Why would you do anything but? This is what you need to do. So you keep chasing after that and you keep producing and you keep achieving. But then your body is like in this constant state of readiness again. It worries that stopping is dangerous, which you felt some of, and you never are able to really regulate and feel safe in short periods of time, like taking a vacation and not being able to relax like you did, because who you are is determined by everything. So who are you when you're not doing anything? And it's that busyness, that performance is an active avoidance of that question because the question feels threatening.
So, SuperKate, what starts to change when we begin to regulate our nervous system instead of performing competence?
Well, your sense of time changes. So you start feeling like you have more time because you're not pushing forward. You're able to actually be in a present moment. And that, while it doesn't give you more than 24 hours a day, your understanding of how much you can actually fit in a time period changes. And you are able to be with your family, with your friends, with your pets, with like energetically with a deer outside or whatever. Like you are in the presence. It expands time. I know part of that is experiencing it yourself, but I think most people know what it's like to have a moment where they think, oh my gosh, I can't believe we've been talking for this long, because you get into the present moment and you let go of all of the other thoughts and the judgments and everything. Your relationship with your own opinions change. You can hear thoughts about yourself, all of those negative thoughts that we often have, and just say that's a thought and not that I'm actually that horrible person that negative thought thinks I am. It's just a thought. Or you're never going to be a guest on another podcast. That's just a thought. There's no proof behind it until there is. And if there is, well, what do I do with that? And that's not a threat anymore. You start feeling your body as information instead of noise. You can notice when your shoulders tighten, and you can feel that intuition, as we often call it, when somebody asks you to do something and you want to immediately say no, but you start overriding it with a yes. And your belly's like, I'm getting those anxious flutters about this situation. You should pay attention to this. Like I was talking about earlier, your relationship with failure changes. So it's no longer failure. It's not a determination of your worth. It's just information. You no longer look at things as I'm worried I won't know enough to I'm just actually curious. I like to know things. So I'm going to learn a lot of things. Not I have to know all these things. So people know I know all these things, or my client is never going to have an answer that I can't answer, or never have a question that I can't answer. Our relationships change. When we regulate the nervous system, we don't think it actually affects anybody else, but it does. And they may not be able to pinpoint it, but when they notice that you are listening instead of coming up with your answer before they finish, they can sense that. Or that moment when you hear something from somebody else and you are no longer taking that, even though it has nothing to do with you. Their emotional high is affecting how they're saying something, and that puts you in a threat mode. You can now, in a regulated nervous system, say, this is not a reflection on me. They are going through something, and I'm going to be here listening to this. If it has something to do with me, I'm going to be able to recognize that and take the next best step, whether that's an apology, whether that is a conversation, whatever that is. We don't preempt that with managing. You get to enjoy the small moments. You get to enjoy petting a rabbit. You get to enjoy hearing your friend go on and on about some person at work that is so ridiculous. And you just think, this is amazing that this bothers them this much, but they need to be heard right now. And I can just hear them in this like crazy impossible life that we have, in the infinitesimal impossibility of us existing on a planet that is habitable, that has us in this moment in time, that I get to have this conversation with you because I happen to meet somebody in a program who had a conversation with me, and like all of these possibilities that happen to line up to the one moment that you are experiencing. Again, it's so impossible. What a awesome gift. But it can be hard to recognize that as a gift when everything feels terrible. Being able to have those moments with the regulated nervous system, that begets the better decisions moving forward. It begets the more you're going to take care of yourself sustainably so you can keep doing the things you love instead of working ourselves into a chronic stress of chaos that burns us out.
So, for those of us that are listening right now and we recognize this in ourselves, where do we start?
You're going to start with a breath, just one. And in that breath, you're going to feel your feet on the floor, or you're going to feel your hands in your lap. You're going to just take a breath and notice. And then maybe later, you're going to take another breath and just notice. And it's easy for us to, in those moments, oh, I shouldn't be sitting this way, or I should have breathed deeper. Just a breath. Okay. Perhaps it was a shorter breath. Okay. Just noticing. And that breath will turn into another breath later on, where you are in the present moment with that breath. And building each of those moments is proving in that minute little moment that you are safe. You were safe to take a breath in that moment. And noticing without judging, checking in with the body, what's actually happening with my body right now without judgment. Is my back feeling tight? Not. My back's feeling tight because I didn't work out and I lifted this heavy thing the wrong way and I shouldn't have done that, but I should have been more, I should have been more in shape. Like all of those things can happen. Or it can just be my back is feeling some pain. Huh. Okay.
The end.
Yeah.
What does this confidence start to feel like over time, though? As we start doing this and as we start like doing this practice daily, what can we expect? What does our body start to feel like?
It feels less. We're breathing deeper. Our muscles aren't as tightened. Our jaw is more relaxed. Our tongue isn't pressing up against the roof of our mouth. The to-do list isn't overwhelming anymore. Instead of it being this thing that we are having to do, it's just a list of things that we could do. We are more connected to how we feel in the present moment and how that is more of a reflection on who we are outwardly than what we are aiming for. I feel like it's an emanating, but it is an emanating that requires very little from me. It is just an emanation that is part of life, and it's not dulled or negated by everything else.
And SuperKate, if there's one truth you hope listeners take away about confidence and the nervous system, what would it be?
There's nothing wrong with you. All of this confidence is in you. We just get to uncover it. Society has put a lot on you, but that is just the society that we're living in now. There's nothing wrong with you. You have confidence inherently in you. It is an existence that is there. It's just been buried for a long time. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you.
Well, SuperKate, this has been such a wonderful conversation, and I'm so grateful for your wisdom today. Where can people find you if you'd like to be found?
I am on the socials as the SuperKate or SuperKate Slepishka, depending on where you're finding me. I've got my website, thesuperkate.com, and I have a podcast called Connecting with SuperKate. But I'd love to just meet you or email you or whatever and just have a conversation, because the way that we move forward is connecting with each other through regulated nervous systems so that we have the ability to evolve and create the better world that we ultimately want for ourselves and for everybody else.
Well, thank you again so much for being here. SuperKate, do you feel complete?
I do. Yeah.
Amazing. Seekers, one of the biggest perspective shifts from this conversation was realizing that confidence isn't about becoming more impressive. It's about becoming more present. Because when our nervous systems begin to regulate, we stop chasing worth through productivity, performance, achievement, and other people's approval. We begin to trust ourselves, take up space differently, and relate to ourselves with more compassion. Now, y'all, next week we continue our exploration of self-worth through a perspective that completely shifted the way I think about healing. I'll be joined by dignity coach Marielle Foyce to explore the difference between self-worth and dignity, why so much of our self-work can unintentionally keep us trapped in the belief that we need to fix ourselves, and what becomes possible when we recognize that our dignity was never something we had to earn in the first place. I'm Julienne Irons, and this is Perspective Shifts for Healing with the Hanged Woman. If this episode inspired you, please like, share, and follow so we can keep the conversation going. Until next time, hang in there, Seeker. And remember, perspective is power.